Okay, so you decided you want to get into bait finesse. You watched a whole bunch of YouTube videos on it, did your research, sent pestering emails to a bunch of bait finesse YouTube channels, decided on your rod and your reel, you got them in hand, but now you're kind of stuck on what are some good bait finesse lures that actually catch fish. And hopefully this video will help you out. Now, for any bait finesse anglers out there who have successful lures that are tried and true, feel free to comment down in the comment section with what they are, and hopefully it'll be a resource for anybody looking to increase their bait finesse success rate. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to, I guess, pick a generic category, but then I'm going to show you my personal favorite lures in that category. And several of these lures have caught my personal best bass. So let us begin. So the first lure category, as you can see, is going to be a soft micro paddle tail swim bait, and I personally suggest something around the 3-inch range, at least for bass. And my personal all-time favorite 3-inch paddle tail swim bait is going to be the KAETEK Easy Shiner. And this is the lure that showed me just how effective smaller finesse lures can be, especially when the bass aren't really in the mood to feed or bite. Now, this particular lure, the Easy Shiner, is super deadly in clear water like creeks or during the winter when the water clears up in the lakes. And I found this lure really effective during the spawn, believe it or not. Now, of course, during the spawn, you have the bass that are bedding, but you also have a lot of bass that are just roaming around. I guess the ones that couldn't find a mate. But it's often hard to catch those bass. But I found success using the KAETEK Easy Shiner, and I don't know what it is about this lure, but during the spawn, if you've ever fished it, you know that there are a ton of little minnows and sunfish swimming around that try to eat the bass eggs on the beds. But for some reason, this little soft paddle tail swim bait from KAETEK seems to be able to draw attention from big bass, even though there's a ton of other small fish around. And I'm going to tell you guys a little story here. Now, I was fishing the spawn and I threw out a KAETEK Easy Shiner, and it probably looked very similar to this. I think this is a 16th ounce jig head, and what I like to do is I like to just barely crawl it back in the tail, and since this is such a quality swim bait, the tail will kick literally no matter how slow you reel it in. But I also like to throw in some pops or twitches during my retrieve. So I was watching my swim bait come in, and all these other panfish were following it and pecking at it, and then all of a sudden this dark shadow comes up beneath, and it's probably at least a 4-pound bass. Swallows this lure, turns around, I set the hook, and it darts underneath the dock that I was fishing under. And unfortunately I was undergunned because I was using an ultralight bass rod and only 4-pound line, and the rod wasn't strong enough to pull that bass out from under the dock, and the line rubbed up on, I guess, some wood and snapped. So I lost that fish. But despite all those other little fish that were swimming around this lure inspecting it, the bass seemed to single this lure out and eat it, and not any of the other abundant bait fish that were around. So if you have trouble catching bass during the spawn, I would give one of these a shot. Just pair it with your favorite 16th ounce jig head, reel it in real slow, but throw in some rod twitches here and there, and it seems to work for me. Now there are other swim baits out there like Keitech's own Swing Impact and Swing Impact Fat. I like to use the Swing Impact Fat in dirty water, and I'm gonna start experimenting with the JACKALL Rhythm Wave here this winter. But as for now, my favorite 3-inch paddle tail swim bait is going to be the Keitech Easy Shiner. So as you can see, the next lure is going to be a 4-inch stick bait, and here's an example of a 4-inch stick bait, which is, I guess, the Yum Dinger 4, which is a ripoff of the Yamamoto Senko. And I do know the Senko comes in 4-inch as well. Now I don't have a personal favorite 4-inch stick bait yet, but I've had a lot of success on this one, which is the Zoom Centipede, but unfortunately I think these are discontinued. Now I did see that Zoom had another product in its place at Walmart, and I'm gonna try to check them out and possibly use them this winter. But these are perfect upper end bait finesse lures. You can fish them wacky, you can fish them weightless and weedless, and you don't need really heavy line to get a good hook set. I usually use 6 or 8 pound line when fishing small stick baits like these, and they seem to get bit no matter what time of year either, whether it be spring, summer, fall, or winter. If a bass sees one of these falling through the water, it doesn't seem like they can resist. So if the 5-inch Senko isn't working for you, try to reach for the 4-inch and you might get better results. Now in fishing these lures weightless, you're looking at about a 5 to 6 gram lure, so once again perfect for upper end bait finesse. And there are a ton of these at Walmart, so you can buy them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So next up, of course, as you can see, is a finesse worm. And my favorite finesse worm of all time has got to be the JACKALL Flick Shake. And in fact, these are my 2 favorite colors right here. Now this is considered a worm and not a stick bait because pull one out, you can see it's very soft, and I think the mold for these has slight curves in it. So if you fish this wacky rig, when it falls through the water column, it actually has a lot of bends in it like a real worm. And in fact, I believe it was this color fished wacky rigged that got me my first ever 5-pound bass. Now I think these are more versatile than a Senko, and that's because even though you can fish it like a Senko, whether it be wacky rigged or weedless, this worm is actually part of a system, and the other part of the system is the JACKALL Flick Shake jig head, which I don't seem to have one on hand with me. But if you fish it on the JACKALL Flick Shake jig head, you can actually fish this down at the bottom, and what you do is you just twitch your rod tip and that jig head will rock back and forth, making this little worm shake at the bottom, hence the name Flick Shake. Now they do come in different sizes. My favorite is the 4.8 for Bait Finesse. I think they come in like 5.8 and maybe even smaller in Japan, and I think there was like a 9.8 as well. But this is probably one of the best kept secrets in bass fishing because the Senko gets all the attention, but the Flick Shake is just as effective in my experience. Now when you rig it as a wacky rig or maybe a light wire wide gap hook for weightless and weedless, you're probably looking at around 5 grams total, which is perfect for Bait Finesse. So if you haven't given the Flick Shake a try, I suggest you head down to your local Bass Pro because I know they have them there. And Bass Pro also carries the special JACKALL jig head for these as well. So if your Senko isn't working, try one of these out. So next up, as you can see, is going to be some kind of a soft plastic Hellgrammite bug lure. Now, I've only started fishing these type of lures within the last couple of years, and wow, they are really effective, especially in creeks, ponds, and shallow water. Now the current hottest Hellgrammite lure out there is going to be the Nico Hellgrammite. Now Creek Fishing Adventures has been using this lure for years, absolutely catching probably thousands of bass, and Richard Jean the Fishing Machine has recently started using these in his creek fishing, and he's been tearing it up as well. Now I think this is the 3-inch, and I think this is the only size they come in, which is the perfect size for Bait Finesse. But what's funny is that I've had several packs of these Nico Hellgrammites for a few years now, but I've never fished them. And that's because I always forget I have them, and by the time I rummage through my tackle and see them, I'm not fishing. But I do plan on definitely trying these out this winter and especially next year. But the lure that I have been using is this. Now I call this a Hellgrammite type lure, even though I don't even know what kind of bug this would be. But this can be easily found on AliExpress all over the place, and they come in several different colors. And the great thing about these is that they're cheap and they're very durable, and they actually flat out work. Now I believe this is either 3 or 4 inch, but when you rig it up weedless, it comes in at right around 5 grams. So perfect for upper end bait finesse. And what I suggest is that if you're fishing this in a creek, especially one that has trees on the side with overhanging branches, as soon as the lure hits the water, just be ready, because I find that most of my strikes come within half a second of the lure hitting the water. But the action of this lure is not really all that great, but I guess it just looks so realistic. And these 3 to 4 inch sizes are perfect for bass. And in fact, I find these lures so effective that I even suggested to Ariel over at JACKALL USA to tell his bosses that they need to come out with their own Hellgrammite lure, because these lures are definitely going to be more and more popular. Now the last lure I'm going to suggest is going to be a finesse jerkbait suspending in the 65mm range. That equates to a little over 2.5 inches. And the key word being suspending, not floating, not sinking, but suspending. And here is a great example of one of those jerkbaits. This is the Fish Arrow 3-shot 65 SP. Now these jerkbaits can weigh anywhere from 1/8 of an ounce all the way up to 3/16, but they are absolutely deadly in the winter all the way through the spawn. Now the problem with these finesse jerkbaits is that there are not very many options out there for them. In fact, this one right here, the 3-shot 65 from Fish Arrow, has been discontinued for a couple of years now. But fortunately for you guys, the best 65mm suspending jerkbait in the world is still readily available. And that is the Lucky Craft Pointer 65 SP. Now these come in deep diving versions as well. In Japan they're known as the B-Freeze, but this is my favorite suspending jerkbait of all time. And in fact, the Pointer 65 caught me my first ever jerkbait fish, and it also caught me my PB 5.2 pound largemouth. And since this lure is so awesome, it is readily available in several online tackle shops, so they're not hard to get. But when you do shop for them, you're probably going to be literally overwhelmed with the amount of color choices. So I'm going to suggest some colors for you to start out with. The first one is going to be MS American Shad, probably the prettiest color scheme of any hard lure I've ever seen. Now this color catches literally everything, not just bass. I've caught trout, crappie, big bluegill, drum, catfish. So literally everything eats the Pointer 65 MS American Shad color. Now here's another favorite color of mine, and I'm not sure what the name of it is. I think it's like MS Gun Shad or Gunmetal Shad. We have a lot of shad in our lakes here, so this color is very effective. Baitfish silver, also very effective. Check out that awesome silver color scheme there. And then the color that got me my PB 5.2 pound largemouth, which is Ghost Gill or Ghost Bluegill. Now once again, 65mm jerkbaits are not a very popular size, so there's not a lot to choose from. But Duo Realis makes a 63mm jerkbait, the Rosante 63, which is also a very effective, awesome suspending finesse jerkbait. But the only problem is that the colors are extremely limited compared to the Pointer 65. But the colors they do have are very good. Now I've tried the Live Target micro jerkbaits and I literally caught nothing with those. Even though they look cool, the action was just not there. But yeah, there we go guys. My favorite and most effective bait finesse bass lures. So if you've been bait finessing and you haven't had any luck, I suggest you give them a try. And once again, if any of you guys out there have a favorite BFS bass lure that you didn't see in this video, comment it down in the comment section and share it with everybody. Alright guys, thanks a lot.